여러분, 부자들이 어떻게 사는지 보셨나요? 이상하게 부자들 유튜브 채널 가서 보면 부자들은 진짜 신기할 정도로 돈을 잘 모으잖아요. 아니, 우리랑 그렇게 똑같이 사는 것 같은데도 아직 주변에는 돈 없는 친구들이 너무 많은 것 같아요. 사실 이건 다 이유가 있어요. 이 부자들 중에는 무려 70만 개가 넘는 비트코인을 가지고 있는 투자자들도 있는데, 그런 고래 투자자들이 압도적으로 열광하고 심지어 미국 방송에서까지 난리가 난 돈 모으기 비결이 따로 있다는 거죠. 단순히 주식이나 부동산을 하는 것보다 돈 모으는 속도는 더 빠르면서 리스크는 상대적으로 덜한 이 방법은 뭘까요? 도대체 비트코인? 결국 또 코인하라는 뻔한 소리 하고 있네 하실 거예요. 근데 절대 아니니까 1분만 제 얘기 들어보시면 움직일 기미는 코딱지만큼도 안 보이던 여러분의 자산에 이게 무슨 변화를 주는지 전문가의 입으로 싹 알려드릴게요. 돈 모으는 게 이렇게 쉬운 거였어? 하고 놀랄 준비된 분들만 영상 끝까지 봐주세요. 지금부터 마이클 세일러가 직접 말하는 왜 비트코인을 꾸준히 계속 모아야 하는가를 들어보시죠. 저는 이 영상을 보면서 결국 개인 투자자가 해야 할 답도 분명하다고 느꼈습니다.
You know, what's the best way to predict the future? It's to determine the future, right? If we basically buy $100 billion of Bitcoin, it's probably not going up 0% a year for the next decade.
I want to learn what your perspective is on strategies, disposition towards accumulation of Bitcoin, of BTC further out in the timeline in 20 to 30 years. Because like right now, as I understand it, like MicroStrategy is an aggressive accumulator of Bitcoin. Will it always accumulate Bitcoin, or will its disposition shift at like, I don't know, 5% of the supply, 7% of the supply, 10% of the supply to be a little bit more defensive rather than aggressive? Will there ever be a strategy
We're
pivot?
laser focused. We're just laser focused, right?
비트코인을 세계에서 제일 많이 가진 회사가 지금도 레이저처럼 집중해서 계속 산다고 말합니다. 이 한마디로 끝이 나버리네요.
Look, for 300 years, the world ran on gold-backed credit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I have a bunch of gold. I issue credit on top of the gold. That was basically all the sovereign debt. That was all corporate debt. That was all currency. Everything was gold-backed credit. We think if Bitcoin's digital gold is digital capital, then digital credit on top of digital capital is fine. Like, you don't need a heterogeneous capital structure. Like, I just described the theory of asset-backed capital. You could do it with gold. You could do it with paintings. You could do it with Manhattan real estate. I think a general principle, though, is if you decide to take a company public and be the Manhattan real estate company, then you're better off to focus on Manhattan real estate and not diversify into ice cream trucks and Monet paintings and gold and crypto assets, because the business model is within reason infinitely scalable. Like, for example,
my question
we could sell $100 billion of credit or $1 trillion of credit and buy $1 trillion of Bitcoin, and everything just works better, you see? So diversifying.
No, this isn't a question about diversifying.
Focus.
This is a question about, is accumulation fundamental to strategy, or will there become a target that you hit, or maybe not a target, but just a period of less aggressive issuance?
But do you understand? I'm describing the business model, which is we issue credit, we acquire capital. If we stop issuing credit, we'll stop acquiring capital. But there's $300 trillion in the credit market, which is currently yielding SOFR plus a spread. And the spread is like 80 basis points to 200 basis points. So consider, what if we just wanted to convert 5% of that? Right? You're getting to $15 trillion of credit. And can you pay better than 280 basis point credit spread? Sure you can. So if you issue the credit, in order to actually make good on the credit, remember I said, where's the dividend coming from? It's coming from the capital appreciation. where the real brilliance of the business model is you're acquiring a capital asset that you're holding in perpetuity and you're never realizing the capital gain on it. If you pay the dividend by remitting the unrealized capital gain back to the credit investor, the dividend becomes a return of capital dividend, which means it is also tax deferred. So the basic principle is I'm entering into a capital investment that I expect to hold in perpetuity, and I'm paying a dividend on the unrealized capital gains through issuing a derivative instrument that allows the credit investor to collect dividends for a decade, tax deferred. And should they die and pass that credit instrument to their heir, they get a step up in the basis. So you could be a retiree, collect dividends for 10 years, not pay tax, pass it through to your heir. They get a step up and they get 10 years of dividends that are also tax deferred. So the thing that makes the entire structure work is that you're making a capital investment for a credit investor and you're absorbing the uncertainty of the future and the volatility of the present on the balance sheet of the common equity in order to strip the risk and strip the volatility from the credit investor's portfolio. And the credit investor is paying you handsomely for that, right? And everybody's getting what they want, right? The capital investors in Bitcoin get a benefit. The equity investors in strategy get amplification of Bitcoin, and the credit investor gets that stripped down, low volatility digital, instrument, digital yield instrument. And so you don't really want to stop. If someone were to give you $10 billion and you didn't buy Bitcoin, then you actually lose the 30% ARR that's paying the dividend. So now now you have to find something else to invest in that's going to perform 30%. And so what is that something? And the answer is, here's the answer. I don't think there's anything better, right? I think
돈도 더 벌 기회가 있는데 안 사는 게 오히려 리스크라는 논리입니다.
I think that that's the best long-term capital investment. But it doesn't really matter whether you agree with me or not. The point is, I run a public company, and all of the equity investors in the public company are Bitcoin maximalists, right? And so the people that hold MSTR believe that Bitcoin is going up more than 10 or 11%, and they want to outperform it. So when we're selling the credit to buy the Bitcoin, we are aligning with the equity investors. We're giving them what they want, which is more Bitcoin per share. We're supporting the Bitcoin ecosystem by buying the Bitcoin, providing liquidity, and then we're backing the credit with over-collateralized Bitcoin, like 5x as much Bitcoin as the credit. And if you're the credit investor, you're able to assess the credit risk by plugging in the price of Bitcoin, the volatility of Bitcoin, your opinion of the future ARR of Bitcoin. That spits out a credit risk for you. And if you go to our website, you'll see we've actually published that credit model. It's a very transparent credit model based upon the BTC rating of the credit instruments. BTC rating is the degree of over-collateralization. So $1 of credit backed by $5 of Bitcoin is a BTC rating of 5. So it's a long-winded answer to your question, but the point is the credit model is predicated upon a homogeneous collateral base. The equity model is predicated upon a homogeneous capital base, right? And that allows all of these investors to invest. Now, you might think, well, you're 100% all in on BTC. Well, yes, we are, but let me make one more point. The equity portfolio of the professional investor isn't. So if you're an equity investor, you might decide that you want 1% of your money invested in Bitcoin equity. Or you might decide you want 1% of your money invested in Bitcoin credit. So we are a pure play, transparent, understandable set of securities. And that way the investor can make intelligent decisions, whether it's to allocate, to hedge, to short, to go long, because we've given them this pure Bitcoin credit and this pure Bitcoin equity. If we were to diversify, if we were to hedge, we would be creating an opaque security, an obscure credit risk. And now it becomes very difficult to assess the risk. And so the issue is, it doesn't matter to me that the equity investor loves or hates Bitcoin. What matters is that they need to know that they can short $100 million of our security or go long $100 million and know that we're not going to obscure the credit risk or the equity risk, you see. So for us, we have created a pure play digital credit company. And to the extent that you don't believe, if you think Bitcoin's radioactive going to zero tomorrow, you don't want to touch any of this. But to the extent that you believe that Bitcoin is a real asset and you have an opinion on it, whether it's negative or positive, doesn't matter. If you have an opinion on it, you can rationally invest in it. You can trade it, you can arb it, you can short it, you can go long. And so that's why we're always 100% focused on Bitcoin as the backing capital structure.
Always 100% focused라는 표현 그대로예요. 비트코인은 잠깐 들고 가는 자산이 아니라 꾸준히 모아야 한다는 거죠.
For the equity and for the credit. And we don't need, look, if this was New York City, you're like, well, what happens when you bought up all of New York City? You know, what do you do next? Well, it might be a more complicated thing, but Bitcoin is global digital capital. It's not a little city. I'm not going to run out of Monet paintings to buy, right? It's the most pure manifestation of a capital asset. It's just pure economic wealth, right? Capital. So there's no reason to diversify. The more Bitcoin we buy, the better it is for the entire ecosystem, the less risky it is, and the less uncertain it is for all of the various investors, whether they're capital investors, equity investors, or credit investors that are involved with our company.
세일러는 비트코인을 더 축적할수록 생태계 전체의 불확실성이 줄어든다고 보는 거예요. 결국 결론은 멈춤이 아니라 계속 DCA로 모은다. 이거예요. 자, 정리해 볼게요. 세계에서 가장 공격적으로 비트코인을 축적하는 사람도 지금 고민하는 건 언제 멈출까가 아니었습니다. 오히려 어떻게 더 오래, 더 꾸준히, 더 크게 축적할 수 있을까? 그걸 고민하고 있네요. 그렇다면 저 같은 일반 투자자가 언제까지 사야 하나 고민할 필요가 있을까요? 방법은 다르지만 방향은 같아요. 꾸준히 모으는 것. 그래서 저는 비트코인 DCA를 합니다. 한 번에 마치려 하지 않고 오래 가져가기 위해서예요.